This week, Tim Cook and Apple made a decision that will change the entire future of the company. Let's get started. Tim Cook and Apple have been criticized for many things over the past few years, but one thing people have praised them for is their consistent track record of growing revenue. Year after year, Apple has been able to grow revenue even in mature markets like the US by selling more iPhones than ever before. So how did they do it? Well, first off, they moved away from the days of the iPhone 6, when they only sold just one model of the iPhone every year. Now, Apple releases 5 new iPhone models every year, which means there's always something for everyone. Then Apple changed the way they priced the iPhone. They used to sell the base iPhone for $200, but now they don't even have a base model. The cheapest iPhone you can buy today is the iPhone SE, which starts at $430. That's an increase of 215% since the iPhone 6 days. By removing the base model and increasing the starting price, Apple has reduced the number of entry-level iPhone buyers and instead attracted higher-end buyers who spend more money on upgrades and accessories. And finally, Apple has expanded into lucrative markets like India, where they've gained 8% market share and are now the #1 smartphone brand. With these 3 strategies, Apple has been able to grow revenue even as smartphone sales decline worldwide. But this might soon come to an end, because according to Ming-Chi Kuo, Apple is about to face a nightmare scenario where none of these strategies will work anymore. First, Apple is working on a lineup of new iPhone 15 models that will be incredibly similar to the iPhone 14 lineup. This means there won't be any major changes to drive upgrades, which could lead to declining sales. Second, the price of iPhones is likely to remain high as Apple wants to maintain profit margins despite global inflation. This could lead to demand destruction as consumers tighten their spending. And third, emerging markets like India are beginning to favor local brands over foreign brands, which means that Apple's growth days in these regions might be over. So what does this mean for Apple's revenue? Well, we already have some hints. In Q4 of 2023, Apple's revenue declined by 9% to $87 billion. While this wasn't due to a lack of demand, but rather production cuts, the same thing is bound to happen in 2024 as well, except this time due to lack of demand. If we look back, we can see that Apple's revenue has been steadily growing from 2020 to 2022. But in 2023, they suffered a setback with revenue barely growing in the first half and then declining in the second half. So what is going to happen in 2024? Well, Morgan Stanley doesn't expect much improvement, with their estimates suggesting a 0.6% increase in revenue for 2024. If this proves to be true, it would mark the first time since the iPhone that Apple's revenue has actually fallen year over year. And the last time this happened was in 2016 when the iPhone 6 South came out. Also, if we look at profit, then things look even worse, because Apple's net income is expected to fall by 2.5% next year. But why is this happening? Well, as mentioned earlier, one of the main reasons is that there won't be any major changes to the iPhone 15 lineup. In fact, the only major changes are USB-C and an action button, which is not really a big deal. To make matters worse, this is going to be the most expensive iPhone lineup of all time. The second reason is that consumers are tightening their spending. As inflation remains high, consumers are prioritizing essential purchases and delaying discretionary purchases like a new iPhone. Also, many smartphones already on their second or third iPhone right now have a 2-year payment plan, which requires them to pay $30 to $40 per month. But once their contract ends, they can choose to upgrade to a new phone on a different payment plan or skip the upgrade altogether and just use the same phone for another 2 years. Considering the average phone is being used for 4 years, there's a decent chance that many iPhone users are going to do the latter. And finally, the third reason is that competition in emerging markets is intensifying. Local smartphone makers like Xiaomi, Vivo, and Oppo are gaining ground in India by offering cheaper alternatives to Apple. For example, the top-selling phone in India right now is the $180 Redmi Note 12. This is a far cry from the $430 iPhone SE, which is the cheapest iPhone available. So while Apple is currently the #1 smartphone brand in India, it's very possible that they might get knocked off in the near future. So is Apple doomed? Well, not quite. Despite these challenges, Apple still has some tricks left up their sleeve. First, the iPhone 15 Pro lineup is rumored to feature the periscope zoom camera. And if this proves to be true, then it could attract some whale spenders who want the best camera on the market. Second, the Vision Pro headset is coming in 2024, which should boost Apple's revenue substantially. Just take a look at Magic Leap. Their revenue is projected to grow from $60 million in 2023 to $400 million in 2024. This is largely due to the launch of their second-generation headset called the Magic Leap 2, which they launched in July of 2023. It seems like Apple is planning something similar. So I wouldn't be surprised if Apple becomes a $1 trillion revenue company in 2024. But looking beyond 2024, the situation looks bleak for Apple. You see, the iPhone isn't the only product that's facing headwinds. Apple's AirPods are also seeing declining sales because the market is becoming saturated. Plus, there's no real room for growth since almost all AirPods owners already have a pair. Even Apple's services business is seeing slowing growth as the macro environment deteriorates. When times are good, people are willing to spend $100 or $200 on iCloud storage or Apple Music subscriptions. But when times are bad, they cut these expenses immediately. Considering services account for 25% of Apple's revenue, this is definitely a cause of concern. So what's Apple gonna do about this? Well, Tim Cook has announced that he is stepping down as CEO and handing the position over to John Giannandrea, who's currently the Senior Vice President of Apple's software division. But who is this guy? Well, unlike Tim Cook, who's been with Apple for 39 years, Johnny have joined Apple only 11 years ago when Apple acquired his company called Siri. Since then, he has become one of Apple's key executives and played a huge role in building out Apple's A systems. In the meantime, Tim Cook will transition to the role of executive chairman, which means he'll still control Apple, but from the sidelines. And this shouldn't be a problem because Tim Cook has proven himself to be a great leader who took Apple to new heights. Under his leadership, Apple became the world's largest company by market cap and grew from a $350 billion revenue company to a $3 trillion revenue company. And it's not like Tim Cook was handed over the keys to Apple during easy times either. He became CEO in August of 2011, right around the time Steve Jobs resigned. And in his first year as CEO, Apple stock fell by 22%. So Tim Cook had to turn the company around, and he did so by diversifying Apple's revenue sources and expanding into new markets. So while it's sad to see Tim Cook leave, it is also important to recognize his contributions and wish him the best of luck in his future endeavors. Anyway, let me know what you think about Apple's future. Do you think they can continue growing revenue? Or do you think the worst is yet to come? Comment your thoughts down below. And by the way, Apple isn't the only tech company that's struggling. YouTube is also suffering with ad revenue falling for 11 straight quarters. Check out this video to learn more. But until then, I'll see you guys on the next one.